So good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's community conversation, which is titled, Hey SCRD, what are you doing about water? I'd like to start off by acknowledging that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located within the traditional territories of the Seychelles and Squamish nations. So tonight's event, we're going to be here for in and around about an hour to an hour and a half. To give you a quick run around the screen here of who's joining us. We have Mia Ebrook, who is our Manager of Strategic Initiatives. We have Remco Rosenboom, who is our General Manager of Infrastructure Services. Tonight's event is going to include a short presentation on what the SCRD is doing about water, and we'll also include lots of time for questions too. Just so you know, the session is being streamed live on YouTube and will be recorded, and the recording will be posted to our community engagement page right after the meeting, and we'll outline kind of where you can go and get that information in a little bit. We do have a number of people attending today. Thank you for being with us. If you do want to ask a question at all during the presentation, you can ask it in the chat, and as well as that, you can also put it in the Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll ask our panelists as well to keep me honest with that and to let me know if we're seeing questions coming on up. So we're going to start off with the presentation itself. We'll take a little break in the middle of the presentation, and we'll leave it open for a couple of questions. Mia, Remco, if you want to take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aidan. And thank you to everyone for attending today. Okay, we've received so many questions about water, and we wanted to take this opportunity to reach out to the community and check in and let you know about the various projects that we have underway. So in the summer, most of the SCRD water systems remain in stage 1 and 2. We have 9 systems from Langley up to Egmont and Cove Cay, and most of these systems are, as we are currently we're in stage 1, and there are some restrictions right now on limiting the use of sprinklers and soaker hoses. And then in stage 2, the big difference is that you're unable to water your lawn, and there's some restrictions on watering outside. It's the Chapman system, which is the SCRD's largest water system, that often does go to stage 3 or 4 in the summer, and Eastbourne on Keats Island. So to address water supply in the Chapman system, there was a lot of work done around 2015, 2016, on the Chapman Lake expansion project. And that project required the SCRD, because Chapman Lake is in a Class A provincial park, we had to go to the provincial government and ask for a park boundary amendment. And in the end, the provincial government didn't allow this project to proceed. And they said, go find some new sources. So tonight, that's what we're here to talk about. The new surface and groundwater sources that are projects that are currently underway and that are planned, and how the SCRD plans to reduce the likelihood of moving to stage 4. And stage 4 is a ban on outdoor water use. So I'll turn it over to Remco.
Thank you, Mia. The next section I will outline some of the projects that we currently have underway to increase our water supply. Yeah, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. The picture on the earlier slide is related to this project. There was the picture of the groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of our Church Road Wellfield project. This project is located in Bentham's Landing, and it will provide water to the Chapman system from Halfmoon Bay all the way to Soames. What we're doing is we're connecting 2 new drilled wells in an aquifer, and we're constructing a new treatment plant, and we're all connecting that to the Chapman system. In total, we are expected to provide almost 5 million liters a day. And as a comparison, during stage 4 last year, we were using about 10 million liters a day. So it will provide during stage 4, it will provide about 50% additional water, which will most likely significantly reduce our likelihood that we'll ever have to go back to stage 4 unless in emergency circumstances. The funding is a long-term loan that was approved by the community through an alternative approval process in 2020. And we're hoping to have it ready for commissioning in September. But due to supply chain issues, we're now looking early fall. Yeah, can you go to the next? So as indicated, that project will be completed in 2022. And another well development project that's currently on the way is our Langley well field expansion. This is located near the BC Ferry terminal. Actually, the well field, the wells are being developed adjacent to the overflow parking that's located on the left side when you're standing in line for the booth. Langley is currently a separate and standalone system, and as part of this project, we will connect to the Chapman system so that the additional water that comes from this well can be fed into the system and can provide relief for the system, so that even the residents all the way in Half Moon Bay get more water security. So we're developing 2 new wells in that area. The cost for the development of the Langley well field is currently estimated at 6.5 million, but we're not yet in a stage yet to confirm that, and how it will be funded. That will come within the next year. And if all goes to plan, we hope to get our water license in 2024 so that we can start the construction and have this well field developed in 2025. So the 2 projects together will relieve a large majority of our current water supply shortage that we have during the summer. So this project, the Grey Creek water treatment plant project, is a little bit of a longer term project. Grey Creek is located in Tawanak. We are already using this water source during the summer. Usually when we're getting to stage 3 or 4, we get special permission from Vancouver Coastal Health to use this water source. We have infrastructure at site to treat the water and to take the water from the creek, but it's undersized for actually using the water full year round, and to have it use it as a permanent water source, especially during rain events or there's high turbidity in the water. It's very brownish, and we would need to do a significant investment of several $1 million. There's an estimate of 3.5 listed here, but it's to be confirmed, to actually upgrade the treatment system so that we can use the source year round. So what we're currently exploring is if that's actually a feasible option. We're currently monitoring creek flows to make sure that actually when we would need the water during the end of the summer, that in the future, this creek will actually be able to provide the amount of water we will be looking for. So because of the monitoring we're currently doing, the actual construction would not be completed until 2024 of a new treatment plant. Next one, please. This Supershell will finally get its water meters installed next year. We have to install about over 4,800 water meters in the area. There was a long-term loan as well approved for this one, for this project. It was approved last year. We're currently finalizing the planning, and we hope to go to tender to seek a contractor to actually do the installation this fall, so that we can start the installation maybe late this year or early next year. And it could take about a year to a year and a half to install all the water meters. But it will definitely allow us to identify leaks in the seashell area. So we're really looking forward to the completion of this project. Another system, as Mia indicated, that currently is frequently going to an elevated water conservation stage is our water system on Eastbourne, on Keats Island, Eastbourne. The users there are used to going to stage 4 every year, but we're trying to relieve some of the pressure by developing additional wells in the area. The actual total construction cost will be can only be confirmed when the test wells are being drilled. So we're currently drilling 2 test wells in the area this fall, and we hope that they will provide us more insight in what the total development cost of those wells will be. So we hope to be able to make good progress there and see if we can get them online next year or the year after. The next 2 water systems that I'm going to touch on actually have no issues with going to stage 4. Those are the South Splendor water system and the North Splendor water system. The South Splendor water system has about 1,000 users, and currently there's no risk of it going to stage 4. The water supply from McNeil Lake has proven to be sufficient over the last several years to avoid that we need to go all the way to stage 4. However, there's a significant amount of old and undersized water mains in the area that will need to be replaced in upcoming years. And based on the current cost of water mains, that could cost anywhere between $17.5 and $20 million. And that's a huge challenge that we have to address in that area. So I say a timeline of 5 to 10 years to complete it, but that's to be confirmed. Next. North Splendor still has some old water mains, but we're chipping away on those. But the primary risk currently for North Splendor water system is actually not that it's going to stage 4 as well, but Garden Bay Lake, the primary source for this water system, is in part due to climate change, is having increasingly water quality issues. So we might need to upgrade our treatment facility at the intake location at Garden Bay, and we're currently undertaking a feasibility study to confirm what it would look like and what it would cost. But a rough estimate is that it would at least cost over $1 million. And given that we're already having water quality issues, which are impacting also the water that's coming out of the taps of the residents, it can be colored a little bit brown into late summer, early fall. This is really something that we need to get on, that's a high priority for us. Mia, back over to you.
Great. So Remco's provided an overview of the projects where there's troubles in the ground, there's cost estimates that are closer than some of the ones I'm going to describe that are more for the future. It's thinking about what we're going to do next. So we're going to start off with the SCRD water strategy. So this is a water supply plan that it's almost, sometimes we call them drinking water management plans. And the SCRD has multiple water supply plans that were written and finalized in around, I guess, the early aughts, the 2010. So 2013 was when the Comprehensive Regional Water Plan was developed, and that one was for the Chapman water system. And there are some water supply plans for the other systems, and then some systems don't have water supply plans in place. So the SCRD water strategy is aiming it's saying, we know that we have water supply plans that are water supply projects that are underway. What are we going to do next? And how are we going to ensure that we have a plan for safe and reliable water for current and also future generations? So at this point, we've been talking to the community and we're asking, what ideas do you have? We've presented some ideas through a survey that's available on our Let's Talk webpage. And we have them divided into 4 categories. So water supply, like we're talking about tonight. Remco touched a little bit on infrastructure, the big part of providing water to your home. How is the water going to get there? Ensuring that there are no leaks, that we have water meters. And then thinking about source water protection. There are a lot of sources where Remco just talked about Garden Bay Lake. That's really close to people's homes and really raising awareness that that is a drinking water source. So thinking about ways the SCRD could play a role there, even though traditionally that has been the role of the province and First Nations. And then the 4th pillar is water efficiency. So that ties to, we talked about installing water meters in Seashell. That will bring us a fully implemented water meter program. We do share that data out. If you're ever interested in receiving your data, you can always, or your water use data, if you have a water meter, you can email infrastructure@scrd.ca to get your monthly water use update. And we're working on making sure that that water use data is more easily available. The outcome of this project will be a 10-page public-facing plan that will explain what we're doing to secure or to increase water security for the future. Right now, this plan is under development. We'll be drafting it this summer and fall, and then we'll bring it back to the community for further, to seek further feedback. Okay, raw water reservoir. We get asked about a reservoir very, very often, and there is work underway. The SCRD was looking at multiple sites, and right now we've honed in on site B. You can see on the map, if you look very closely, it's just above the Chapman Creek water treatment plant, and it's also above the Seashell Airport. And this would serve the Chapman water system. And the beauty of this type of project is that it would be gravity fed right to an existing water treatment plant. There are a lot of things to consider when we think about a raw water reservoir. We need to have significant access to land. We need to ensure that it's safe. So if there was an earthquake or another type of emergency power outage, we need to make sure that it still functions, and that the site itself is sustainable. And this is truly a piece of infrastructure that is really for the long term. We're developing cost estimates and a plan for this site right now, and so that's why the range that's posted here is quite big. So we're still not sure, and we're also not sure if this is the option that we would move forward with. It's just one of multiple potential options that could increase water supply in the long term. Reclaimed water feasibility study. So this is a project that the District of Seashell looked at starting last year. They operate a water resource center where they treat wastewater to, it's treated to a tertiary level. So it's quite good quality. And the question is, now what do we do with it? So they asked the community through a survey last year, and they came up with several top options, thinking about using reclaimed water for non-potable uses. So whether they should water golf courses or parks. And one of the options that came out was to add and pump tertiary treated wastewater to the Chapman Creek. In Chapman Creek, the idea would be that we have obligations, the SCRD, to the province to ensure that there's sufficient flow. That's called environmental flow needs for aquatic life, to ensure that fish and other aquatic species have sufficient water, especially during the dry months. And then we would be able to divert more water upstream near the treatment plant. This project is estimated at around $11 million. And again, when we talk about a timeline, we haven't chosen this project. It's just one option that we want to weigh against other ones like a raw water reservoir or potential other long-term sources. So that leads to a long-term surface water feasibility study. And we know we get feedback on too many studies, but we do have quite a few projects underway. And when we think about investing tens of millions of dollars, we want to ensure that we're choosing the right site. And again, that it's going to provide a safe and reliable water supply. So we have, in the past, have looked at Clohome Lake and Sakana and Rainy River, and we want to look at these sites again and see if these might be potentially better options than the ones that were presented previously. So we'll be looking at these sites again and seeing if these would be, in terms of cost effective, or there's, I guess, lots of lots of different aspects and considerations to think about when you're adding new water supply. Is it close to a treatment plant? Is it close to where people live? And thinking about the cost to operate these systems in the long term. So at the same time, we'll also be looking at a long-term groundwater source feasibility study. So for the same reasons, we've had pretty good success. You heard from Remco earlier. Church Road Wellfield will add a significant amount of water to the Chapman water systems, and Langdale also has the potential to do the same. So we're wondering, are there any sites that we've missed? This is not as easy as looking for surface water. We do have to do some drilling, which can have a cost associated with it. So we'll be looking at, we'll have a consultant who will look at maps and determine where the best places to do some test wells are. And then we need to determine whether we can actually get enough water from that location. So this is also a process, and this is why these sources are for thinking about the projects that we have chosen and that are where we have shovels in the ground. They'll be really important for the short term, but when we think about the long term, we want to ensure that we have projects that we're starting now, so that when we think about the decades to come, that we have projects in place that will meet the needs of this community. I'll turn it over to Aidan.
Thanks, Mia. Thanks, Remco. Great information there. So for everyone attending, again, so if you want to ask a question, you can ask it down in the chat or else in the Q&A section. You can also raise your hand and we can promote you to be a panelist, and you can ask it to our panel yourself. So we do have a question here from Lucy, and Lucy's asking, when will we be charged for water we actually use, i.e. based on the meters installed? So Remco, Mia, who wants to take it?
Maybe I can stay. So one of the, as you indicated, Aidan, one of the primary things we need to do is we need to have all the meters in place to actually get the data. So we hope to be able to do that in 2023 or at early 2024 at the latest. More in general, the board asked us to this fall, winter, start working on what could another rate structure look like. Everybody's currently paying the same when we talk about residential users. And the question is, the board asked us, what are the different options? What are the different models that can be used? So that's what we currently are looking at. We'll present it to the board, and then the board will actually make a decision if and when the SCRD will actually move to a volumetric rate system where residents will start paying for the actual use. So the decision to go there has not been made by the board yet. They've asked us to investigate the options and present it back to them. So we'll do that this winter and then go from there.
I guess I'll add, so the Chapman system is only 50% metered, and we didn't think that it would be fair for some people to be on what we call pay-per-use or a volumetric rate, and the other half to be on a flat rate. So this is certainly something that would be more feasible once all the water meters are installed in the district of Sechelt. And I'll also add that in the water strategy survey, we've added some questions to introduce the idea and ask the community, what should we consider when we're thinking about a new rate structure?
Perfect. Thank you both. A couple of questions coming in here on the chat. We got Adam. Thanks for joining us this evening, Adam. So Adam's asking, are you able to conduct testing to determine if there's any leaks in Sechelt's water system before meters are installed?
Thank you for the question. One of the projects one of the budget items approved this year was to purchase a leak correlator. That's a device that would allow staff to put almost, you can say, ears onto fire hydrants and listen if there's a leak in between those two fire hydrants. It's a very time-consuming activity, but we can use it if we suspect that there is a leak in an area, that we can hone down to confirm if there is actually a leak in the area. It's too time-consuming to actually do entire discussion through that method. So, but if we suspect that there is a leak somewhere, for example, water is showing up on the street, is surfacing or in a ditch, then that's one of the things that we do to actually look for to confirm if it's indeed a leak in the system. And it can be in our system, or it can be on the line between the road and the curb, as well to the house, so on somebody's property. And if that's the case, then we would inform the property owner. But so we have an ability, if we suspect that there is a leak, to confirm where the leak is, but we cannot confirm. There's no methods to install to confirm meters all over Seychelles without meters being in place.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. Kim has asked a question here, speaking about some of the current projects. So we gave some rough timelines for current projects, looking more so towards the longer term ones, such as the reservoir, the surface water sources. I'm wondering whether or not we can provide rough time estimates for those projects. So again, the reservoir, surface water sources as well.
Yeah, can you take that one? Then I can add to it if you want.
I don't know if I can.
Okay, maybe. Let's put it that way. If the projects that are currently on the way are that will be completed in the upcoming 3 years between now and 2025, as indicated, are Church Road, Langdale, as well as the installation of the metering program. We expect that these 3 projects together will result in 2025 that there will be no need anymore to go to stage 3 or 4, that we can stay at stage 2 from 2025 onwards. As indicated, Cray Creek is expected, if feasible, if the feasibility is confirmed, we can have Cray Creek online in 2027. That will further increase our water supply. So the actual need for us to develop a reservoir or another big water source might not be there for the next 8-10 years. That's to be confirmed. So, but how, as indicated by Mia, the development of those projects can take a long time. For example, I can easily understand and see that development of a reservoir, to get all the permits in place, to do all the analysis, potentially an environmental assessment certificate by province, can easily take 5 to 10 years. So that's why we're planning now, do the water strategy, develop the plans, so we can actually get the work started that might be required to get those projects constructed in early 2030s, to avoid a situation which we had the last several years, where we actually too late in developing them and that we had to go to stage 3 and 4.
Perfect, thank you. Doug, I see your question in the chat there. We haven't asked that one yet, and we will come back to it in a second. But before that, we got Lucy, who's asking about watering lawns. Lucy's question: watering lawns is wasteful and unnecessary use of expensive treated water. Has the SCRD considered banning lawn watering completely?
I think the answer is that it's currently watering lawns is currently prohibited at stage 2 and onwards. And stage 2 is the time when we call stage 2. Usually we call stage 2 when we start relying on the storage in Chapman and Edwards Lake fully. So from that point onwards, the lake levels are lower than the dam levels in those 2 lakes. And we know how much water we have in those lakes, and that's where we most likely have to deal with for the rest of the year, for the rest of the summer. So prior to that, there is still water flowing over the dams, and usually the environmental flow needs can easily be met. And so there is actually excess of water. There's a certain amount of excess water until that point. So I think there is the current approach is quite balanced, that when we get to a point when we really have to be resourceful with our water, from that point onwards, also the watering lawns is prohibited.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. So we have Doug in the chat, who's asking about, he says, sorry, had some technical problems. No problem, Doug. Just if you missed the presentation at the start here, you'll be able to go back and watch it on YouTube. Mia and Remco gave some great information there. But Doug is asking whether or not the questions come up yet in terms of how we ensure there are considerations between new development and water considerations. So how do we do that? How do we ensure there's considerations between new development and water considerations?
I can start there, and Mia, feel free to add. So, as I just indicated, we're anticipating that the projects that are currently underway, being developed, being installed, will address our water supply deficit, our water shortages during the summer months by 2025. And I indicated that Church Road will really make a huge difference there by the end of this summer. So in those projections, we included development growth rate on the coast of 2% a year. However, even the last 5 years, when there's the perception that we grew significantly over the last 5 years, the average growth was even less than 2%, was 1.75%. So we actually over predicting the growth on the coast. So we're really on the conservative side, and still we are making good headway in tackling the growth, tackling the water supply. And I think it's also good to realize that the SCRD needs to find a balance between growth that is going to happen, and that is, I think we won't be able to stop that. I think that the drivers are there. And as well as providing affordable housing on the coast. If we would stop water supply if we stop growth only with the objective of reducing the water demand, then the affordability on the coast would really the housing affordability crisis would even significantly increase. So therefore, the SCRD is currently starting a project to harmonize, to update our official community plan, to really build that framework for how the community can grow and develop in a way that's sustainable from different angles. So that's a project that we will start this year, and it will last for several years. But that will be really the key plan to make sure that long term we have a balanced approach between water supply, climate adaptation, as well as affordability.
Thanks, Remco. And if anybody's interested in what's going on with our planning bylaws right now, we do have a community session tomorrow evening at Roberts Creek, the school there, just in their gymnasium. I believe it starts at 7 p.m. But you can learn more on our community engagement page at letstalk.scrd.ca/bylaw 722. There is a question here, question/comment, I guess. It's an anonymous attendee, and they're asking, how is it fair that the Seychelles Nation doesn't have to have water meters installed, but everyone else does? Does this mean they can build homes without contributing? I think, Remco, you good to take that one?
Yes, I will take it. So we are currently working with the nation to address exactly that answer. So we're having discussions on infrastructure improvement and growth, and how to balance that for the nation. And that includes the question: how can we identify leaks on their on their lands, on the nation lands, and how can we ensure that they are resolved as well? So that is something that's definitely on the radar, and we're working on.
Perfect. Thank you, Remco. So a couple of questions here in the Q&A. So Anna, thank you for your patience. You asked a question a little while ago. Just talking about climate change. So in thinking about the effects of climate change, has the SCRD found evidence of how this is affecting our watersheds and snowpacks? For example, snowpack depth measurements. How are these done, and do they show changes over time?
I can kick this one off. So there's a lot going on at the SCRD right now, and at the same time, one of our colleagues in planning has also launched a climate action plan that is also under development. So if you go to our Let's Talk page, I think it's letstalkscrd.ca/climate, you can learn more about what's happening there. In the forecasting projections that we've done previously, we've looked at different scenarios, one of them being 180 days of no rain, and looking at, in terms of water demand, what does that mean for this community? Thinking about those growth projections that Remco just mentioned, around 2% growth. Do we have enough water, and how much water do we need to meet community needs? We definitely have more work to do. There's always, as we bring more sources online, thinking about the future forecasts, and we'll certainly be working closely with our colleagues who are doing that work around climate action, and ensuring that we're using the same assumptions and looking ahead and using the most current science. I'll turn it over to Remco for the snowpack data.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I lost the question.
John, I can repeat it here, Remco. So the portion view, essentially, they're speaking about climate change. Has the SCRD found evidence of how it's affecting our watersheds, and in this case, snowpacks? And they're talking about snowpack depth measurements. How are they done, and have they shown changes over time?
Thank you. Thanks for repeating, Aiden, and thank you for the question. So we are measuring snowpack. Every month, staff go up to Chapman Lake as well as Edwards Lake to monitor our snowpack levels. And like this year is I think when we look outside, today was a different one, but the temperatures are currently lower than anticipated, than common for this time of year. So we still have currently snow at both lakes, which is rare. So in order to actually identify change in snowpack levels, it's really important to look at long range trends, 10, 20, 30 years. And we don't have the kind of trends, long-term trends for our system. So it's hard for us to identify long-term trends itself, but it's definitely visible if you look province-wide in systems that have snow monitoring data in place for longer time periods. You can see a decline there. So it's not as that we see a long-term trend. However, there are definitely years where we've seen the snowpack be gone earlier than there was the case 10, 20 years ago, and earlier in the year. So it's really the timing. Last year was a year that snowpack was gone earlier, and that's earlier than was 10, 20 years ago. So it's more empirical than really that we can support it with scientifically supported data, but we're seeing changes, yes. And also during the summer, we see that the watershed is drying out earlier. There's low flows in the tributaries of Chapman Creek, and that's all impacting our ability to provide water to the community.
Great stuff. Thanks, Remco. And yeah, as Mia mentioned earlier, we have started working a community climate action plan, and there is a community engagement page on the Let's Talk platform again, and you're going to be hearing more about that in the coming weeks. Mia, this next question asked us by the Coast Reporter. Thank you for joining us this evening. Is it part of the SCRD proposal for water rates for all properties that are classified by BC assessment as farm class be classified as commercial farms and charge metered water rates as commercial operations?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a two-part answer. So the work that we're doing right now is with the current bylaw. The bylaw already has exemptions for farm class, or sometimes referred to as class 9 properties that are classified as farmland through BC assessment. And in our water rates and regulation bylaw, it refers to commercial food producing farms paying a metered rate. And they actually have quite unique exemptions. If you are a class 9 property paying the metered rate, you contact the SCRD, you can have exemptions from water conservation regulations in stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. Oh, sorry, stage 1 to 3. Stage 4 is a little bit different. And stage 4 came around last year when as you remember, it was a really hot summer. We had a very dry spring, and we got feedback from farms that they need help. And the board decided to provide a 2-week exemption in stage 4 only for class 9 farms. So now we have a bylaw that has 2 different provisions that are referring to the same type of properties. So the work the SCRD is doing right now is really to raise awareness about who actually qualifies for these exemptions. So you need to be on the metered rate, and letting farmers know that, and seeking feedback on some proposals that we put forward to them. So it's not something that's on our website because it's quite a focused engagement where we've reached out to anyone that we think would be interested. So these properties, associations that represent them, and then anyone who has asked for the exemption in the past that may not be on class 9 property, but they are generally an institution, and they are already paying the metered rate. So that engagement is going on right now as well until June 30th. And then when we look at a new water rate structure, we'll be looking at both commercial and residential rates. And commercial rates, there's only one commercial rate per water service area. And right now, farms fall under that commercial rate.
Perfect. Thank you, Mia. We have a question here from Scott in Q&A. Doug, I've seen your question in the chat there. I'll get to you right after this one. So Scott's speaking with North Pender. He says the water quality issues from North Pender sound more than a bit concerning. He's asking what steps are being taken to monitor water quality and report it out to residents that depend on it. Is there any reasonable likelihood that the water will be unsafe for drinking before the new treatment plant is online?
Thank you. I will take that question. Thank you, Scott. And thank you for the question. And I appreciate your concern, because it is something that occurred several times of the last several years, and that's why we've taken the action that we're taking right now. We're in communication with Vancouver Coastal Health to ensure that they are fully aware of the situation, and the moment they indicate to us that, hey, situation, the water quality is not such that it could result in an impact to the safety of residents, measures will be taken, and we will take the guidance there from Vancouver Coastal Health if that would be the case. In terms of the monitoring, we're frequently, really frequently monitoring the water quality of the treated water, of the untreated water, to identify any risk. So the moment we see we're approaching the turbidity levels that could result in water quality issues, we are reconnecting with Vancouver Coastal Health, and we're discussing what we can do. So if we get to the stage, we'll consult with Vancouver Coastal Health to see what kind of measures can be taken to address the issue. But turbidity itself, the fact that the water can has a color, does not really, the fact that it might have a brown tint is not itself resulting in a health concern as well.
I'm going to add to that, if that's okay. So the phenomenon that, I think Remco has alluded to, but he hasn't actually maybe added what it is. So this is a naturally occurring phenomenon. So this is related to lake turnover events, which is when temperatures rise really quickly and the lake essentially flips on itself, and you have a lot of organics coming up. And when there are a lot of organics in the water, it's difficult for our current treatment systems to treat them. And what you get out of the tap, the challenge is, when we talk about water quality, there's lots of aspects of water quality. We're talking about color and taste. So we are regularly monitoring water quality at all of our water sources, and we follow Canadian water quality guidelines. And yeah, you can I think Remco mentioned this earlier in the presentation, we're seeing it more frequently because of things like heat domes and climate change. So when temperatures rise quickly, we may see more lake turnover events in a season.
Thank you both. So anybody who's joined us there in the last little bit, if you want to ask a question, you can do so in the chat or in the Q&A down the bottom of your screen there. You can also raise your hand if you want to ask it live here to the panelists. So Doug, I have your comment in here. So Doug earlier had asked a question. It was essentially around ensuring that we had considerations between new development and water. So we had provided him a response, and now Doug is asking, is that growth in terms of water consumption? He says, water is not a question of affordability of housing, it's reliability into the future. He said he appreciates the future comments, but we also have the impact of I think it might be short term or short run. Can you help me understand how you balance that, similar to the nation on non-nation property? I think Remco, you had answered the original. If we need any clarification from Doug, we can maybe ask chat here for us. I think we may need a little bit of clarification. What do you think, Mia Remco? Yeah, Doug, if you could maybe just segment that question up a little bit for us into the chat, and then I can absolutely ask.
So maybe I can clarify. When I was talking about growth, I was talking about a 2% growth in population of the coast. So we anticipate that there's a 2% population growth on the coast, and we included that in our assessments. And it's not so, as indicated, the last 5 years the average was 1.75. So we're currently on the conservative side, and it includes the development on nation and non-nation land combined. And the work that we're doing in terms of the planning for the harmonization of the official community plan will also involve working with the nation to make sure that that long term that the plans align for nation and non-nation land.
Okay, I understand the question now. We're saying, are we seeing a significant increase in water use overall? Like, how? The answer is it's the opposite. Yeah, and so if you look back to 2013, there are a lot of factors that can influence water use. So people could be more water aware, or changing fixtures in their homes and be more water efficient. They could also be following water conservation regulations. It's not, we can't tease that out, but what we know right now is that water use today compared to 2013 is lower.
Thank you, guys. I'm just going to jump over to a question in the Q&A. It's Anna. Thanks again for your question, Anna, and for joining us. Anna's asking, is there a need to preserve watershed in the face of pressures to develop upslope? And is asking if that's part of the planning process. I don't want to take that.
Mia, I think it's maybe you can, yeah.
Of course. And then maybe we can come back to Doug's question afterwards. Sorry, I was reading it. Okay, so last year, the SCRD explored watershed protection programs, looking at what can the SCRD do for broader watershed protection. And what resulted out of that project, knowing that you're talking about upslope, so it could be development, could be all kinds of, could be clear cuts, it could be other resource extraction. Sorry, I'm trying, but in terms of watershed integrity, yeah, of course. We saw that even this fall with all the storms. We know that when there's very heavy rainfall, in this case, it maybe didn't affect our watersheds and water quality, but it took out some of our water infrastructure, which is part of our broader systems and how we provide water, a water service. In terms of I think our challenge as the SCRD is that when it comes to, if you're talking, let's say, around logging, we don't have a lot of say. But what the SCRD does do is a lot of advocacy work. This is documented. If you look on our website, scrd.ca, I believe it's /logging. You'll see all the reports and the letters and the feedback that we provide to the province when they go through their timber sales review or other engagement processes. This year, there weren't any additional cut blocks, so we didn't provide any feedback. So that is one way that the SCRD tries to preserve, I guess, watersheds, if that's the question, or provides feedback when it impacts especially our water sources. And a lot of the outcome of the project that we did last year was really a need to focus on water supply and our own drinking water sources. And that's really where the SCRD is putting its energy right now. And as part of the SCRD water strategy, that's one of the pillars is source water protection. Does that answer your question?
Hopefully, if it doesn't, you can stick another question in the Q&A there, and if you like. And just Mia just mentioned the water strategy. So again, if you want to learn more about the water strategy, you can learn at letstalk.scrd.ca/water-strategy. And Anna said, yeah, thanks for the info. Doug, we got a question here in the chat. So Doug is asking, from a subdivision/building permit perspective, does the region get asked the question of what is the impact of new development on current water supply considerations?
Good question. I think the answer is, as me indicated, last 10 years our water demand reduced in part because of all the leaks that were addressed, etc., etc. And that's a process that's still ongoing. As a result of that, our overall the water demand is increasing while our population has been increasing. So that has resulted in, we've done several reports to the SCRD board over the last several years on the question, what are the opportunities for us to actually, within the bylaw, within the jurisdiction of the SCRD, what opportunities do we have to ourselves that are within the control of the SCRD to actually regulate growth if we want to, for water supply and from water supply perspective. And we identified several bylaws that can be updated for that purpose. One of them is our rates and regulation bylaw, bylaw 42, and that's a bylaw that's currently being updated. Staff are working on that, and we hope to get back to the board with an updated one in 2023. Another one is our zoning bylaw that's currently being reviewed as well. More information on that tomorrow night in Rose Creek. There is a growth component, of course, there. If you allow more houses on a property, then there might be a slight increase in your overall water supply. But we don't expect at all that those, if there will be secondary suites allowed more than there currently are, that would significantly make a change in on an overall water demand, because we're currently providing water to, let's say for Chapman system, 24,000 people or 19,000 people. But if it's 1910 or 1920, that doesn't make a difference. In the overall water supply, there are way more factors at play here. We also looked at the question, can we actually refuse a building permit or refuse a development permit because we don't support any increase of the water supply associated with development? And actually the answer is no, it's without the SCRD's legislation. We can't do that. It would be really something for the province to change their laws to allow a local government to refuse a building permit or a development permit for that region. If somebody applies for such a permit and they meet the conditions of the bylaws to get a permit issued, we're forced to issue it. And that's so there's no ability for us that's outside of SCRD jurisdiction to even consider that.
I guess I'll also add, what we see in the summer is that outdoor water use is a major driver of high water use. So if you have some people have very efficient drip irrigation systems, but if you have soaker hoses running, if you have a very big property and you're trying to keep it really well watered, it can often be correlated with much higher water use. Older homes with older fixtures, with older pipes that where we see a lot of leaks. We don't tend to see as many leaks in new developments because the infrastructure is so new, and there can be a huge amount of water used through leaks. Like leaks can really vary from very small to very large. So it's not to say that new developments don't use water, but they may not, if they're smaller property sizes, they may not use as much water as a 1 acre property with older infrastructure and less efficient toilets. A toilet that runs, or a very big or old toilet, can actually use quite a significant amount of water. And so I guess really what the SCRD is doing, and a lot of the work that we've been doing, is around really educating and sharing resources and making people more aware of their water. And that's why we're so excited about programs like the monthly water use update. People receive their water use on a monthly basis, and that really helps people make decisions, whether it's in the summer, especially when we're in higher stages 2 and 3. And again, if anyone's interested, you can email infrastructure@scrd.ca.
Perfect. And we're going to keep on plugging those water use updates because they do make a real difference. Remco, there's a question in the chat there for you from Doug, who's just following up on your earlier answer. He's asking, Remco, for the municipalities and electoral areas, you do not have control. And I think that was in relation to just this question on development.
Yeah, I realized that I might not have been fully clear there. What I was talking about in terms of areas, SCRD jurisdiction, that of course is valid for all electoral areas. So we're not able to regulate or not approve building permit or development permit for the purpose of to conserve water. However, that's within the SCRD jurisdiction. But I would doubt if that would be if a municipality would have that ability. I think they are bound by the same provincial regulation. So I think it applies to SCRD as well as municipal properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Remco. So we got a couple of questions that have come in the Q&A. So thank you again. If you want to ask a question, you can ask it via the chat. Put up your hand down the bottom there by hitting raise hand, and we can promote you so you can go ahead and ask your question yourself, or you can also ask it in the Q&A. So this one is from Scott. Thanks again for joining us. So Scott is asking, with all of these large capital projects underway or in the planning stages, has there been any studies to assess the cost impact on the average water user in the SCRD? When you add the flat rate utility rate together with the water parcel tax, we're already at $1,100 a year, and a quite significant amount. It's a good question.
I think one of the things that thanks for the question. It's a fair question because affordability is of course an issue. We're doing everything we can to avoid any increase to water because we're very much aware of the fact that last several years there's been a significant increase in the amount of water that the community is paying. I have to say it's still relatively low compared to some other local governments within the water providers within BC or within Canada at large. But nevertheless, it has been a significant increase for the last several years. So the affordability piece is definitely something that we have very at the forefront of when we make decisions. And I think it will also be, it is a pillar of the water strategy that's being developed. So if you look at there, one of the more information about it, you can see there. So one of the questions we're having there is about how are we going to make sure that we do all the development that we're going to do, how do we do that in an affordable way? And I think that will be one of the questions that we'll get asked by our SCRD board as well, is when we are potentially developing a new water rate structure, how can we set up a rate structure that is actually fair? What kind of classifications do we need to use? What kind of rates do we need to set? Because and that might actually change the amount you pay as a resident significantly. We've known that For example, the city of Mission, they introduced a metered rate structure several years ago where people were paying for what they're actually using. And about 80% of the residents started actually paying less than what they were using right now. However, I also realized that in our case, the cost for all those projects might increase over time. So maybe 80% would not work for us. But I expect that if we were to implement a volumetric rate structure, where people would actually pay for their actual use, that a significant amount of people will start paying less than what they're currently paying.
Great stuff. Thanks, Remco. Just so everyone knows, I'll put a couple of links into the chat. One is speaking about the zoning bylaw updates, which Remco mentioned earlier, to bylaw 722. And there's a click through there to the community engagement page where you can learn more about it. And I also just put something in there on the water strategy as well. If you want to go in and take the survey, you can. So Kim has asked a question. Kim's asking, just curious, how do we know increased water use in the summer is related to watering lawns, etc., versus increased visitors, summer residents, short-term rentals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with properties that do have water meters, we are able to look at detailed data, and we can see sometimes in terms of the patterns, the pattern of irrigation is different than having a shower, or those are more spikes, and these are more I guess increased curves where water systems are left on for hours at a time. But every property is different. Everyone's water use habits are different. So there's no one size fits all. I agree that we have more people on the coast for sure in the summer compared to the winter. And we have been partnering with Sunshine Coast Tourism to spread some messages and tips and ensuring that people know what stage of water conservation regulations we're at, and learning a little bit more about the SCRD in our current water situation.
Maybe I can add to that. What we see if we look in detail in residents, their water use, where we really want to, we can do that on an hourly basis. So then we can actually see the spikes about when people are irrigating. And sometimes those spikes are fivefold of what their average use is, let's say during winter months when there is no irrigation happening. So therefore, we clearly can see a relationship there between irrigation as well and their actual use.
All right, thank you. So no more questions in the chat or the Q&A. So I'm just going to go to a couple here, which came in through our Let's Talk platform, and also some of these are the questions that we tend to get asked around this time of year. One in particular, the first is, why are we in stage one? I know that's something that we hear quite a lot, so I'm not too sure we'd like to take that. So stage one water regulations, and why are we in stage one?
So the SCRD is in stage one on May 1st, like we are every year. We did put up some nice new signs that are a little more clear, and we noticed that it's brought a lot of attention, and people maybe didn't either realize or maybe feel frustrated because it is raining a lot and we are in stage one. Stage one happens, it's in our bylaw. It happens in our regional district and in regional districts across British Columbia. So we're certainly not alone. Metro Vancouver and lots of smaller rural areas and Vancouver Island, where they also have water supply issues, from places that have lots of water to those that don't. May 1st is a very common time to move to stage one. It provides that certainty. It starts to raise awareness about what water conservation regulations are. And it's the time of year where we increase our communications about water conservation and programs like our rainwater harvesting rebates. And I think sometimes you'll notice at the beginning of this presentation, I explained a little bit about what stage one and stage two is. So not everyone is aware, and we're just also trying to get that message out to the community that we do have water conservation regulations and that everyone needs to follow them, whether they're a resident or a visitor.
Thank you, Mia. Yeah, and there has been quite a considerable push out of information. You know, we've had mailouts and the Coast Reporter quite regularly as well, speaking about the water conservation regulations. And so, Remco, at the start of the presentation, you spoke about Church Road and the wellfield development, and we've been asked, you know, why won't Church Road be ready for the summer? I know you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but maybe if you could return to that topic for us, for people who may have joined us in the past half hour or so.
Thank you, no problem, Aidan. So the Church Road project, for years we've been trying to get it online prior to the summer. Ultimately, it took longer for the province to issue us the permit. We were glad to receive the permit, the water license in December. That allowed us to actually award the construction contract in January. With the, as I indicated, the groundbreaking ceremony, so the start of the actual construction early March. At that time, we were hoping to get the project completed in September, early September, which would allow, if we were to happen in stage 4, if a stage 4 were to happen at that time, we would be able to turn the project on and to provide a lot of water extra to the community, and maybe avoid the need for going to stage 4, 3 or 4. What we have seen since, and I think it's no surprise because it's happening all over the world, we've seen significant issues with getting some supplies in that we need. One of the big delays at the moment that we're seeing is some materials that we need to related to our to the pumps. We need big pumps to get the water from the wells into our system. And just like there is a big supply shortage of computers to run cars, that's why all the car lots are empty. It's the same chips and type of computer that we would need to operate our pumps. And so we're looking with our suppliers to see if we can find an interim solution, but it's looking more and more that that's what's that will cause the delay in getting the Church Road well field actually hooked up and properly functioning late summer.
Thank you. Earlier, Remco, in the presentation and me as well, we spoke about the projects that we're doing now, and I'm just going to shuffle through them here real quick. So we got the Church Road Wellfield project, the Landale Wellfield expansion, Great Creek Water Treatment Plant upgrades, Eastbourne and North Pender Harbour upgrades, South Pender Harbour upgrades, and the water meter installation. And these are just the projects for now. And the question that we've had is, how much water will these projects provide? Like, can we put a number on that?
It's so Church Road, as I indicated, will provide about 5 million liters a day, which is about half of the total demand that we are the Chapman Creek has been using last year when we were in stage 4. Langdale, actually, we have an estimated volume, but we cannot confirm it yet. In upcoming weeks, we will complete the development of the test wells, the drilling of the test wells there. And subsequently, we'll actually do tests to confirm the productivity of the aquifer, to see actually how much water can we actually get out of the aquifer in a manner so that it is sustainable, that we can continue to use it for 50, 100 years from now, and we'll have no concerns with climate change or any of the creeks or groundwater users in the area. So, but we're really hopeful about that as well. So ultimately, we anticipate that by when the project is constructed in 2025 and the meters are in place, we would have fulfilled the just about 2 million liters a day shortage that we currently are facing to maintain in stage 2 during the dry summers. So that's the target that we're aiming for, about 2 million liters a day, and I think we're making good progress there.
Thank you. Remco. So another question which I know came up during the Water Strategy Open House, which we held 2 weeks ago there at the Seaside Centre in Seychelles, was about the reservoir. And again, we touched on this earlier on, but asking, why hasn't it been built yet?
I have to correct. Sorry, I have to go back to my earlier answer and then to do this. I said 2 million liters a day, there was a water supply deficit, and that's incorrect because Church Road itself will already provide 5 million liters a day. So skip that number. The number will make sure that it's updated what our currently shortage is on a daily basis. I only have the number per season in my head at the moment. In terms of Water Reservoir, as indicated before, and as Mia alluded to, it will be a major investment, and it will be multi-year project to actually complete. So what we're currently doing this summer, we hope to get our approvals from the province. We anticipate to receive them to actually confirm, to do some drilling in the area, to see at what level the bedrock is, what the composition is, and based on that information, we'll redesign the shape of the reservoir. It's currently designed as being a large, open, flat reservoir, and we're looking to see if that would still be the final design, because we anticipate that based on the depth of the bedrock, we can actually reduce the footprint, make it smaller, and make it deeper, and still have the same volume. So that might also significantly reduce the cost and might have some other benefits as well, operationally. So the reason why it hasn't been built yet is because we're still doing a lot of just technical feasibility work. And when that's confirmed, there is a decision required how an investment of, let's say, $20 million for a project like that compares to the money we would need to develop a connection with one of the other surface water lakes, Glowholme, Rainy River, Sakana Lake, that are being discussed as part of our long-term water supply source project.
Thanks, Remco. And me, you've just put something in the chat there. Did you want to speak further to that?
I don't have the number out of Remco's head, but I just added some numbers for people's reference. So at stage 4, we use about 10 million, and that's with, again, stage 4 is no outdoor water use. So those are very stringent water conservation regulations, and Church Road will add 5 million liters a day, but that won't eliminate water conservation regulations. So, and I guess I'll also reiterate, the goal is not to completely do away with water conservation regulations. We often talk about not going past stage 2. Of course, stage 1 would be great, and some of our systems are able to stay in stage 1, but avoiding stage 3 and stage 4 is the SCRD's goal.
Thank you, Mia. So we kind of have 2 more questions here that I'll run through, but I'll just ask anybody who has a question. Here again, you can put it in the Q&A or the chat, or raise your hand. You can ask it yourself to our panelists. A question which I know is coming up a lot right now is about water bills. And I know we've kind of been speaking to this a little bit throughout the presentation, but just to put a bit more pointedly, just asking why my water bill keeps on increasing. So don't like to take that, Remco or Mia.
Yeah, I will take it. I think there are 2 reasons for that. One, we touched already on the fact that all these developments all the projects that we're currently talking about are not cheap. Church Road, it will ultimately cost in order of magnitude $9 million. Installation of water meters, it's another 7.25. So all of that, all those projects and the preparation for all those projects, that just takes time and energy to complete, as well as it will result in increased operational demand. Our system to manage operationally is getting more and more complex because we have more water sources that we need to manage and make sure that the water quality is all over the place, is fair and good. And I think everybody can see it now in their day-to-day bills, but we've been seeing it already for a longer time in the cost of our materials and supplies, inflation, and the prices are just going up. This year it's extreme. But for example, this year we were facing a 30% increase in the price of our water mains. If we purchase a new water main to do a repair or to expand our system or to replace old mains, it's those kind of costs that are really driving up the price. So while we are trying to do our best to be as efficient as effective as possible, we're really stepping up our efforts, and yeah, that has to be funded.
I guess I'll add, and I know no one likes to compare us to anyone else, but overall, the SCRD's water rates are, when we look at other regional districts in the province, they're still on the lower end. And when we want to do repairs or have major projects planned, that can impact user fees if it's something that we plan to pay for in the short term. And then some of the projects that Remco talked about, like water meters, for example, we took out a long-term loan to have a less of an impact on user fees, so that we go to the province. That's why we go out to the community through what's called an alternative approval process to seek permission to get that long-term loan. Anytime you want a loan over 5 years, or you don't want to pay it back for 5 years, we stretch it out for sometimes 15, sometimes 30, depending, just like think about your car loan or your mortgage rates or whatever, the same idea. The longer the term, the smaller the impact. And we take out low interest rates from the province to pay for some of these major projects, knowing that we don't want to see these spikes in fees. But at the same time, we know that not only do we have water supply projects, but we also have water main replacements, and there's quite a lot of old water mains that need to be replaced throughout the region, and those have a significant cost when you need to rip up the road and the materials and labor that Remco also alluded to.
Thanks, Mia. Yeah, that was Remco's mentioned, a 30% increase on the cost of water mains. And we've got a question here from Adam, and Adam's asking, within the province, what other water systems are similar to ours? Like, is there a comparison in the province?
That's a good question. I think there's so many systems that are unique, and we have a lot of small systems that aren't connected. So that's a bit different than a lot of other systems. When I guess I'm thinking about the regional district of Nanaimo, they have multiple systems, but they're also a much larger regional district. We have 30,000 people. They have 90,000 people. So that's a lot more taxpayers. I just read today that up in Naramata, their system is not the same as ours, but they pay $1,300 a year. But think their population must be a lot smaller. So we definitely have a large area. We're not the largest regional district by any means. And generally, I would say water systems are built around, or should be built around, areas of growth. So then I could imagine in some other regional districts where it is even more rural than us, they may have property owners on private systems like wells or water licenses.
If I can add to that, I think one of the key factors in determining what the cost of a system is the fact what the water source is related to the use, and how the water gets from A to B. And I think we have to be really, really fortunate that our water system is primarily driven by gravity. We hardly use any pumps to get water from A to B. If you are in the Chapman water system, primarily there, but that's the same for South Splendor. The majority of the fact that you can actually have water out of your tap is just because of gravity. Gravity does the job for us. So that's why our intake in Chapman Creek is at a certain elevation. The treatment plant is at a certain elevation. The reservoirs are at a higher elevation. So that pressure in your tap is all based is all because of the gravity. If we wouldn't have had that, the actual cost would be significantly higher. So, for example, if you compare it with the school of Squamish, you would think that's similar in location. However, they're using primarily groundwater. So they have a lot of electricity, high electricity cost to pump all the water out of the wells and into the system. So each system, even though the size of the community is comparable, it's all dependent on where the water source is and related to where actually the demand is.
I'll add, so we have that long-term surface water feasibility study, but a lot of those sources are really quite far away. And that's something that we'll have to consider. And when someone crunches the numbers, they'll say, when you look at Clohome Lake, like, go look at a map. It's a lot of pipe. And that's pipe that now becomes ours and that we have to maintain and upgrade. And all of that needs to be taken into consideration when we choose a project.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for the question there as well, Adam. So we've kind of touched on some of these throughout tonight's presentation, but I just want to get back to them because they are questions that we have had come in through our engagement platform. One's just asking about water meters again. So essentially saying I have a water meter and asking why does the SCRD still charge a flat rate? And I know we've kind of spoken a little bit to this, but maybe if we could reiterate and add to what we said earlier.
I'll give a quick answer. We have 3 water services. 2 of the water services, North and South Pender, are fully metered. And the regional water service, even though these systems aren't connected, they're all part of the same service. So when there's an upgrade in Egmont, everyone in the regional water service puts it into the same pot of money, and we all pay the same fees in the regional water service. Only 50% of properties in the regional water service are metered, and we're really looking forward to having a fully implemented water meter program with water meters on every service connection. I will add that commercial users currently, there's a list in the bylaw of the type of commercial properties that we do charge the commercial rate. They get a volumetric bill every quarter, so they get billed more frequently, and they do pay a flat fee, and then on top, any water they use on top of that, they pay the volumetric rate. Currently, the flat fee is actually equivalent to the residential rate, and then any water in addition is at a pay-per-use rate. And right now, we are starting to explore what that could look like and what changes may be needed to both the commercial and the residential rate. And again, we haven't made any decisions. We do get a lot of questions about when we're moving to a flat rate. That decision hasn't been made, but we're starting to look at what those options could look like, and we'll present some options to the board likely next year.
Thank you, Mia. So again, if anybody would like to ask a question before we wrap here over the next couple of minutes, you can put it in the Q&A or the chat below, or you can raise your hand. Mia, to put you on the spot a tiny bit, sorry, just we spoke earlier about the water strategy, which is ongoing right now, and just wondering if you can speak maybe a little bit to how people can get involved in the water strategy. So
tomorrow we are having our first roundtable discussions. This is really an opportunity to go beyond. We've presented a framework, but now we want to know what type of tactics, like what are the steps the SCRD should be taking? As I mentioned earlier, we have a few ideas, but we're wondering what we've missed, what people may think of the ideas that we've brought forward. The first meeting is going to be for the South Pender system. It's going to be at the Pender Harbor Community Hall at 4:30, and then we have one for the North Pender Harbor system. North Pender Harbor Water System at 6:30. We'll be up in Egmont on Thursday, and the meetings for the Chapman water system and some of the smaller systems in the regional water system like Soames, Granthams, and Langdale will be the following week. And all the dates are up on our Let's Talk water strategy page. And we'll also be doing some tabling at the end of the month outside of the SCRD office if anyone wants to drop by. Maybe they missed the open house, and then we have a question and answer form up on our webpage as well. So people have been asking questions, and we post the answers publicly so that everyone can see them. survey is open until June 30th. And if anyone ever has any questions, they can always email us at waterstrategy@scrd.ca or ring the Field Road office and ask to speak to someone.
Thanks, Mia. And just before we wrap up, we do have some folks who are attending who are obviously interested in water through the summer months in particular. And earlier we spoke with stage 1, stage 2, and the water conservation regulations. And Remco and you, of course, Mia. Remco, maybe speak a little bit. There we go. Here's the handout. Is Remco, right now we're in the midst of our drought response plan, our DRP, and I'm just wondering if you could maybe elaborate a bit more on kind of what's happening week to week right now as we kind of look towards July, August, September, October.
Thank you, Aidan, for the opportunity to provide a little bit of information there. So what we're doing on a weekly basis, we do an assessment of what is the weather forecast, what are snowpacks, what are creek levels, and what is the demand of the community. So the demand of the community, we on a daily basis, we know how much water we actually are producing in our treatment plants and from the other sources. So we assess that data and we see how that compares to the amount of water we can extract from Chapman Creek. So at this point, there's a good balance there. As indicated earlier, we have 2 dams at Edwards and Chapman Lake. Currently water is overflowing both dams. The moment the water stops overflowing Chapman Lake Dam, that's the time when we call stage 2. From that point onwards, we have to regulate the amount of water in Chapman Lake, and there's more water flowing. Usually there's more water flowing out of the lake than there is flowing into the lake. So that's the time when we call stage 2. And last year, that was earlier than it will be this year because we're still in stage 1 and there is still tons of water up in the lakes. So that will not happen for a while. So which is positive. And based on the weather forecast and how quickly the water levels are dropping in the lakes to meet the demand, we will raise it to stage 3 or stage 4. So weekly we're meeting with operational staff that are doing more involved in the communication, as well as the staff that are looking at the water meter data and doing forecasting. And especially during stage 3 and stage 4, we're also in weekly contact with Environment Canada to get accurate weather forecast data for our region. So it is a dynamic process that has started since April, and that will continue to do until we know for sure that the rainfalls has started again.
And in the coming months, Remco provides a water supply update. It'll be the second Thursday of the month at the committee of the whole meeting, and we always post that video up on our Let's Talk Water page.
Yep, it goes on the website and on the Facebook as well. So it's nearly time for us to wrap up here. If anybody has any last questions, please feel free to put in the Q&A or the chat. If you're just joining us on YouTube, if you cycle back about an hour, 10 minutes, you're going to hear quite a lot. We spoke about water metering, development, utility rates, current projects, future projects, the water strategy that's ongoing right now. Short-term rentals came up, the Water Reservoir, Church Road Wellfield project. So lots of really great information. If you are watching us on there, and again, if you do want to get involved in the water strategy, you can do so at letstalk.scrd.ca/water strategy. And if you go on the homepage of the letstalk.scrd.ca, you're going to see more information about some other projects that we spoke about here, and updates to our planning bylaw 722, which again will be at a community information meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Roberts Creek School there in the school gymnasium. And as well as that, we spoke earlier about the community climate action plan, which again you can learn more about on our engagement platform too. And so unless I've forgotten anything, me and Remco, I'm gonna wrap it up. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and like we say, stay tuned to the Let's Talk page for more information on the water strategy and ongoing water projects. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day.